I'd like to call to order the meeting tonight. It's the Tuesday, May 9th, 2017 Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Board Member Roth?
Here.
Board Member Burgess?
Here.
Board Member Shelley?
Here.
Board Member Maldonado?
Here.
Board Member Williams?
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Fairclough?
Here.
Chairman Porter?
Here. Any additions, deletions, deferrals?
Yes, Mayor. There is an addition to tab 4, Exhibit 3. In error, one of the applications was left out of your packet. So there were 9 applicants for the not-for-profit grant award. All 9 were evaluated, but the 9th application did not make it into the agenda item. And so it's been provided for you.
Chapman Partnership?
That's correct, Chapman Partnership.
Okay. Is there a motion on tab 1 to move the minutes? Move it. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. New business, tab 2.
This is a housing rehabilitation grant, and this is a motion to approve the resolution. Staff recommends that the CRA Board approve the resolution authorizing the award of $15,000 of housing rehabilitation funds to the following applicant: Cynthia Colon and Jose Navia. The scope of work includes priority work to ensure safety and maintenance of the home, which involves electrical repair, roof repairs, and the repair of broken windows. If rehabilitation funds remain after the priority work is completed, then hurricane shutters will be installed, exterior painted will be done, and the driveway will be repaired.
Any questions on tab 2? Mr. Roth?
Just one, Mayor, thank you. Jim, I just noticed it took quite a while for this to come here. It took two and a half years or so. Can you explain why it took so long for this to be approved?
Yes, sir. There is a CRA CDBG housing rehabilitation grant program. And when the CDBG grant, which is through the city, was approved, there were applicants that were slated for CDBG funds. It was a first-come, first-served program. We found out about a year in that a lot of the applicants who had applied would not be able to receive funds because the funds would be exhausted. And so eligible applicants who lived in the CRA and met the guidelines were then switched over to the CRA program. And so unfortunately, this applicant was in the CDBG process, went through the process, and then we realized we did not have funds available in that program, and then was switched to the CRA program. And that was the reason for the delay.
So is there a waiting list for people who need some help with their properties? Or is this just like one of the last that was part of the CDBG grant stuff? There is still a waiting list for CDBG.
So there are applicants who are not in the CRA, who would not be eligible for CRA grants, who are still on the waiting list. And so if the applicants before them do not exhaust the maximum amount permitted per applicant, they may still be awarded funds. This application is one of the applicants that was moved to the CRA process. There are a few more that were moved over that are in process. There's either 4 or 5 more that will be continue to be put through the CRA process.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Williams?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Question on, you said that there are some more in the pipeline of this magnitude that some are being converted to this process, but why would it take 2 years, though, for this to come forward? I mean, I heard my colleague ask, why did it take so long? You really didn't give the sufficient. I'm looking for an answer. What was the delay of 2 years? If this is the same application, same guidelines, then what took 2 years for it to get to here?
It is the same application, but the guidelines are a little bit different. There are some things that are covered under the CRA program that are not covered under CGB. Additionally, the process to be awarded is different. So under the CDBG program, we work with our CDBG consultant who then approves applicants based on whether or not they meet the criteria. He goes and does site inspections. The CRA process involves taking the items before the Southwest Advisory Council and this board. Additionally, this process is primarily applicant-driven. So applicants are required to provide a verification of a number of things: assets, employment, proof of ownership. Verification of assets is traditionally done through the banks. The banks can take a little bit long. And so, unfortunately, when an application is switched over from CDBG to CRA, some of those verifications have to be updated because time has gone by, and some of those verifications do take longer than we would like.
So who determines that, I guess it's based upon what is they're asking for to be determined whether CRA, besides the geographical area in which they live in, determines to be within the guidelines of the CDBG dollars? And if we have committed the CDBG dollars going forward, is there any room left for next year if we've already approved what we approved, I think, like a couple weeks ago on that process? Is there any CDBG dollars that will be accessed for this program because of how we have tied up the dollars for going forward?
I can look into that and get back to you. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer.
Okay, get somebody else from staff, may know, finance, through the mayor, through the chair.
Board Member Williams, there was about $403,000 set aside for the housing program under CDBG. Like Gemma said, we can try to give you an update as to what they are, but most of the monies have been committed, meaning that the people that have submitted for applications, at least the money's been kind of designated for those. So until it goes through the process and the projects are completed, then if it frees up any money, then those monies will go back into the pool to be able to help other homeowners.
How much money did you say is left in the pool?
I didn't say how much is left. I said originally there was $403,000.
Right, originally.
What's left right now, I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay. All right. So obviously there must be none left if they can't go through this other process, right?
Unfortunately, I don't know how much is left in the CDBG program. I do know how much is allocated for the CRA program.
So I'm saying for this application, you say that they switched over, right?
That is correct.
So there's no money left in the CDBG dollars, right? If you had to switch them over to the CRA, obviously there's not any money left in the CDBG.
Unfortunately, I don't know how much is left. I do know that when they did the ranking, they determined that if every applicant before this one expended the maximum amount permitted, so the maximum amount permitted, I believe, for the CDBG program is $15,000. So if every approved applicant above this application got the full 15, there would be no money for this applicant. And so the applicants that when we did that math, when we looked and said, okay, well, the original number, these are the people that have applied for it. If everyone receives the max, these are the applicants who would not be awarded the grant. And so those applicants were then switched over to the CRA process.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion on tab 2? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Tab 3. Tab 3.
This is a commercial grant award, a motion to...
Hold on 1 second. Hold on just a second. Mr. Rowe?
Yes, I need to abstain for a conflict.
Okay. Thank you. Gemma?
Yes, sir. This is a commercial grant award. This is a motion to approve the resolution. Staff recommends that the CRA board approve the commercial grant award for Robert Barnes and Associates in the amount of $25,000. The building, which is located at 221 to 229 North Chrome Avenue in Homestead, is located in the historic downtown. The location of the building makes it eligible for a 90% contribution by the CRA and a 10% contribution by the applicant. The improvements to the building are to replace the 70-year-old existing front entry glazing with new impact-resistant glazing.
Questions from the board? Mr. Burgess?
Thank you, Mayor. Chairman, the one thing that popped out at me was we're agreeing to give $25,000, yet the estimate that's been given to us for the cost of the project is about $4,200 less. It's $20,811. How do we justify the overage, or what do we do there? I understand it's reimbursable and all that, so, but what do we do without an accountability for the money up front? How do we justify and all that at this particular time if they've submitted an estimate of cost at $20,811?
That is correct, sir. Traditionally, we do permit a small amount for overruns. So oftentimes, particularly with an older building, when they start to do work, they discover that there can be complications when they start removing things that were unforeseen. And so traditionally, we permit a small cushion in that estimate. There's not a standard. I know that for some of our other projects, it's a 10% cushion for overruns related to construction. And simply that's this applicant asked for 25,000. I do know the quote was for 20,811, but we do like a little cushion for just in case when they open up those walls to replace those windows, if they find rotted wood that needs to be replaced, putty that might need to be removed. I'm not a window installer, but in our other projects that we've done, we have found that the older buildings typically require a little more than we anticipate right out of the gate.
I'll leave it for Mr. Williams at this time. Thank you.
All right, sir. Mr. Williams?
Yes. Did you say traditionally, you've been a CRA director for how long?
Approximately 8 months.
8 months. So how many applications have you brought before us at this magnitude?
This is the first commercial application.
So you say traditionally as if you've had some historical point that you've been able to reference to as relates to overruns. How do you justify that? Where do you get that from?
In preparing this agenda item, staff reviewed the minutes from approximately the last year of commercial grant awards to ensure that we were being consistent in the process.
So for $25,000 that the person is asking for, how much, the percent of that is 10% that is less? Do you subtract that from the 25 of the project?
The 10% that the applicant contributes, it is subtracted from the actual cost. So if the actual cost of the windows are $20,811, the 10% would come out of that.
Out of that cost, okay. My next question is that as we move forward, I would think that will be policy decisions going forward, so that we will be all on the same page as relates to what we would want that to be or what we want that to look like. Not saying that in the past that this is what has happened. In the past may not always be the best way to do it. And so I will ask next time that, that needs to be a policy decision that is made so that we would all be on the same page, not coming from what you think and from what you have agreed to or what you saw. Thank you, Mayor.
Jim, a question. This is a bill gets submitted and then the city contributes up to the percentage, up to what its commitment was for the cost of that project. So it's not, the 25 doesn't go to the applicant until the job is done and the bills are basically turned in. So it could be more, it could be less, and then you're going to reimburse accordingly up to the 25. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there a motion on tab 3?
Move it.
Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Tab 4. Somebody want to give Mr. Raw? I'll get Larry. Get Larry. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. This item is for the CRA Not-for-Profit Grant Awards for fiscal year 2016-2017. This is to authorize the award of CRA not-for-profit grants. Staff recommends that the CRA Board authorize the award of the CRA grants based on the recommendations made by the Not-for-Profit NFP Grant Evaluation Committee. The NFP Grant Evaluation Committee recommended that the award amounts be changed for fiscal year 2016-2017 and that 6 grants be given. The committee recommends that the following awards be issued. 1, Greater Miami Youth for Christ, KICS, in the amount of $30,000. 2, Mexican American Council in the amount of $20,000. 3, the Seminole Cultural Arts Theater Incorporated in the amount of $20,000. 4, Chapman Partnership in the amount of $10,000. 5, Miami Bridge Youth and Family Services Incorporated in the amount of $10,000. 6, Panther Extreme in the amount of $10,000. I'd like to provide a little background on this item. On April 11th, 2011, the CRA Board passed resolution number CRA 2011-05-06, creating the City of Homestead Community Redevelopment Agency Not-for-Profit Grant Evaluation Committee. The committee was charged with evaluating grant applications and making recommendations to the CRA Board regarding the award of grants. The CRA Not-for-Profit Grant Evaluation Committee would like to recommend a change to the grant award amounts for the 2016-2017 fiscal year in order to award more organizations grant awards and to broaden the impact of the program. The committee's recommendation is to create 6 awards in the following amounts for the 2016-2017 fiscal years, totaling the budgeted amount of $100,000, with the first-ranked applicant receiving $30,000, the second and third-ranked applicant receiving $20,000, and the fourth through sixth-ranked applicants receiving $10,000. There's an important note with respect to the administration of this grant. In 2015, the former CRA director stated that the plan in administering this grant was to make the grant a reimbursable grant. However, that did prove to be administratively impossible. Unfortunately, a lot of these not-for-profits are very small and they don't have very big budgets. One of the organizations that was awarded that year was a health organization, and the grant was awarded to them so that they could buy an x-ray machine to provide x-rays to local low-income youth. Unfortunately, they did not have the $10,000 that they were awarded up front to buy the machine, and so they came to staff and asked if they could be awarded the grant up front and use that money for the x-ray machine and then submit the receipt and canceled check. In order to be consistent with the other grant applicants that were awarded that year, they were all given the money up front instead of through a reimbursable process. In 2016, there was an additional frustration of purpose with respect to making this a reimbursable grant. Because the grant process occurred so late in the fiscal year, it didn't come before this board until August of 2016. The only way to administer the program was to provide the money up front because the fiscal year ended in September 30th. We still think that making this program a reimbursable grant is a valuable idea. However, we do seek direction from this board.
Questions? Mr. Williams?
And that's a change in our conversation today. I'm glad to see that you've come around. Do you have the spreadsheet that I asked about earlier today in our phone conversation? I asked that you provide me a historic analysis of all the grants that we've given out to everybody in the last, I think, 5 years, and what that amount is. Do you have that available?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
Would you like me to read the amounts that were given to these
Yes,
organizations?
I'd like to see it. I'm a visual person, audio. I'd like to see what you have, please.
I'm happy to provide it. Unfortunately, I do not have one for all of the board members.
I said I need to see it. It's what I asked for. George, through the mayor, could you please ask that I see it so I can please see it?
Mr. Williams, see it?
Come on, these games. They need print enough for everybody. I'll release the floor, Mayor, until I'm finished reading this.
Any other questions from council? Vice Mayor?
Yes, I do. Let me just preface my comment by saying that I respect all of these nonprofits that are potentially awardees for these grants, but I just have a couple of questions regarding some of them. As it relates to Chapman Partnership. Chapman Partnership, they do noble work in the South Dade community. However, they are not within city limits. So what is the rationale for awarding Chapman Partnership this grant?
Chapman Partnership did send a representative to this meeting, and they're happy to address that.
Wait, but I'm asking staff,
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor.
because they don't know the rationale. That's a decision that comes from staff.
Chapman Partnership did submit an application this year, and they were notified that the physical address that they provided in their application was not in the city limits. However, the response that they provided to staff was that because they contract with the Homeless Trust, which serves all of Dade County, and because they do have a number of facilities where they provide housing services in the city of Homestead, and many of the children that live, particularly in one of those houses, which is at the Inn of Homestead, 29 of those children attend elementary school at West Homestead Elementary, which is in the CRA region. And Chapman agreed that if they were awarded this grant, they would use the funds only for those 29 children who attend school in the CRA. Their grant application was to provide transportation and a summer camp program for those children. There currently is not a summer camp program for the children that reside at the Inn of Homestead, and this grant would enable those 29 children who do attend West Homestead to participate in that summer program.
Well, actually, there are several summer camp programs in the community, so that's out. Two, where's the roster of these students? I particularly am very familiar with West Homestead, School of the Week, not because I've ever worked there, because I know about it. And it's a very transient community. We attempted to host Bigs and Blue program there, but it wasn't as successful because the kids left. Captain Washington, is that correct? They move about a lot. So how do we know that the children that are slated to partake in this program, I believe 35 children, will continue to reside in that district, or more importantly, attend that school?
That's something that, if awarded, staff is happy to work with them to verify. Additionally, they might be able to address that a little more fully, if you would like.
But I think also, I mean, the answer to the question, I think, is we can't guarantee that. So if that's a concern, I mean, all these are the recommendations of the committee, but if you're not comfortable with any of them, then certainly, like last year, recommendations can be moved according to the policy direction of the CRA board.
Right. Last year, there was a phenomenal nonprofit, Kicks, I have a lot of respect for. My ex-cheerleading coach who worked at West Homestead runs that program, and there was a portion in that grant that I didn't feel comfortable with because based on my experience, I didn't feel that it would be effectively implemented. So I proffered a motion to reallocate those funds. With this, I am not comfortable with moving forward because there is absolutely no guarantee that these students will continue to attend West Homestead Elementary. And last year, or a couple of years ago, there were other nonprofits that were in closer proximity to Homestead that service residents in the city of Homestead, and they were not allowed to apply for the grant. So I cannot support this application because it's not within city limits, and in keeping with policy, I think it is fair that we continue to implement it as it has been designed within the CRA district, serving students that live in the CRA district. No disrespect to Chapman Partnership. They do phenomenal work, but it's a matter of principle for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other questions? Mr. Shelley?
Yeah, just a clarification on some of the points that the Vice Mayor raised, and that is the rules for the CRA grant. They do require a geographic location, correct? So typically are homestead not-for-profits or homestead organizations, are those ones that are given preference, or is it a requirement that they must be located within the city? What do the rules actually say of the process?
The rules for the process are that the organization has a physical location in the city of Homestead, and that they serve CRA residents. Now, this organization, again, serves a transient population, a homeless population. They do have physical locations where those residents are housed within the city of Homestead. Unfortunately, it's a little more difficult, I think, but as the manager noted, this board certainly does not need to follow the recommendations of the committee.
Right, no, and that, my question was, I was just trying to figure out where we were as far as the basic rules. And so, I also believe, and I think we've discussed this in prior, because we used to have a lot of awards going out to not-for-profits that weren't even located within our city limits. And so I think that this board had made that decision that we want to focus on keeping those dollars and directly serving our residents and our community. Not that the other not-for-profits aren't quality not-for-profits, and not that some of them outside the city limits don't in fact serve residents within the city limits. But I think we kind of made a decision at that time to preference local not-for-profits first, and then if no local not-for-profits applied for or existed, then I think we would fall back to, well, okay, do they at least serve our residents? And so I understand where the vice mayor is coming from on this particular case, and I assume that of all the applicants that are ranked, the 9, are all the others residents or have organizations within the city?
All 9 do have a physical location within the city. The other 8 do have their principal place of business located within the city.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is fundamentally philosophical difference that I have today with this, is that if these are CRA dollars, and if we are going back until that they are serving that particular population or sector of the city where the dollars are driven from, then some of these organizations that are on the list, if we were to digress and say, okay, if there are no organizations that within the CRA area that is serving the CRA area, then I thought had mentioned that we would then look at the greater community that serves the CRA. But how many of these actually are in the CRA district? Out of these 9, how many actually are in the CRA district?
I do not know the exact number whose physical address is within the CRA district. I do know that all of them are in the city of Homestead.
Okay. So let me preface myself. I don't want to come off brashy tonight. But I think that answer, I think for me, that would be one of the most fundamental, basic answers that should be known, is the physical address located within the CRA area to find the intent of what we're serving. And here's where I'm coming from. If we are to serve how can we say that we're serving the kids within the CRA area if we don't have accountability of where they are? I know that, number one, Greater Miami Youth for Christ is in the CRA area. I can see the kids that they're serving in the CRA area. I know, been there, seen it. Some of the organizations, I'm trying to figure out how does CRA manage to know if some of these organizations are actually serving the kids in the CRA area? That's what I have a grappling, and that's why I asked for this spreadsheet for me, so I can see. So if you would be able to, thank you for providing that to all of my colleagues. I think that should have been the most appropriate thing to do in the first place. Could you give me some are you not prepared again tonight to tell me exactly where these organizations are located within the CRA?
While some of the organizations are not located within the CRA, the program guidelines established by this board in 2011 were that they be located and reiterated, as Board Member Shelley noted, that the actual not-for-profit be located within the city limits and serve residents in the CRA. In order to ascertain whether...
So let me ask a question. Let me interrupt you for just a moment. in my diplomatic way tonight, how will the CRA know that they are serving the kids in the area of location within the CRA? How will you all police to make sure that they're serving the kids? How do you all maintain that database?
In the program application, the applicant must demonstrate that they serve the CRA area. That is one of the factors that the committee reviews when they make their recommendations for award. Once the awards are made, the applicants are required to complete an audit and a final report with staff.
Okay.
In that final report, the addresses of CRA residents must be provided if they serve specific children, for example, or specific people. If they provide, let's say, a larger a service or a service that, for example, the organization that does x-rays, they can't provide addresses of the people that they provide x-rays to, but they could, for example, say, these are where we recruited from. We went to this community center, we went to this church to ask CRA residents to come for free x-rays. And so some of the organizations will demonstrate their commitment to serve the CRA through their outreach, and other organizations demonstrate that they've served the CRA through actual physical addresses of the people that they serve.
So you're saying that it's at a final report. So is the board, do you come back and report to us the final report of the actions of what has been demonstrated in their report? Do you share that with us in the oral presentation from those nonprofits that we have given money to that serve the CRA area?
There is not an oral report that is provided to this board when an applicant does.
How about a written report that's provided to this
Mr. Wood,
board?
just let her finish, please.
But let me finish. No, I'm asking my follow-up.
But you got
no, let me finish.
The conversation has got to, and we can't talk over one another.
I'm not talking over. I'm asking the question. I'm asking my
You won't let her
question.
answer the question.
Yeah, I did. She told me that
I don't think you did, sir.
I did. Now, if
Well,
you're going to interrupt me,
let's operate through the chair.
let
then.
me. I
Let's operate through
did.
the
I
chair.
did go through the chair. So do you
We're
want me to
getting-
continue?
Yes, you can
Thank you.
continue.
So
But
can I
when
get my?
she talks,
can
let
I
her
get-
finish.
Can I get my answer, please?
If you'll let her speak, she'll answer.
Can I get my answer, please? Through the mayor or the chair. Is there oral report or written report to the board? Yes or no?
Sir, there is not an oral or written report provided to this board, except if the applicant applies for a grant in the following year. In that circumstance, their final report is included as part of their application, and that is something that the NFP committee reviews as part of the application process.
Mayor, may I follow up?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So if that is the case, then all of these, are you saying that we have an actual report from these persons that we have given money to that applied this year? We have those reports in our packet tonight.
You do have most of the reports in your packet. There is one report that was not complete by the applicant, and so it was not provided either to the committee or to this board. The committee was informed that the final report was not complete, and so could not be reviewed by them as part of the application process.
So they didn't get funded. Are they part of the recommendations?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
Are they
first
part
part.
of the recommendations?
They were not recommended by the committee for award. No, sir.
Okay. All right. So going forward now, through the mayor, what are you, the chairman? Chairman, these names. That if that is the case, then I ask through the mayor, through the chair, that and through the manager, to the CRA director, through who would provide a report that will identify those that served in the community within the CRA, that report be provided as a supplemental document not at the end, but how do we get this, that we're able to monitor this so that we can see the vitality of the organization and that they are serving the community in which they are intended to serve and not wait for a final report. Could that be done through the chair, through the manager? Who will answer the question?
The process does require that the applicants provide in their application how they will serve the CRA. There is not currently a process in place to monitor them during the grant itself. The way the process is that they submit a final report within 30 days of the close of the fiscal year. But at this time, there is no monitoring that occurs during the actual administration of the grant.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
That wasn't answer to my question, so how do you want me to address this?
Mr. Manager, do you understand the question? Because there is obviously what CRA is saying, we award the grant. Because the question is whether or not it's serving the community. How do we know it's serving the community? The answer is we don't know that it's serving the community until a grant has already been expended and we're looking to allow them to come back and get another grant. That's the way I understand the question.
That's not what I said. What I said, may I
Yes, please do.
articulate? What I said was, how, as this board, can we have change, let me restate it, change the policy to where we have a mid-report that will tell us exactly who they're serving instead of waiting to the end to find out if they have served the population to that extent. And that's what I'm asking.
Mr. Chairman?
Through the manager.
I think the simplest way to do that is if the board would like, then they could set a policy that would require each of these grant recipients to provide a mid-year report that would be submitted to the board for their review. And we'd be happy to implement that if that's your will.
So the question is, do we want to require them to do a mid-year report? There's no, well, Mr. Manager, there was no report given until the end of the year, after the money's been used and expended. Your suggestion would be if the board wants to see more clarity about how they're spending the money, you recommend possibly looking at a mid-year report. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we'd basically pass the requirement on to the recipients, and they would be required to provide that.
Mr. Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think going through what I'm looking at now, I think waiting to after to find out the final analysis of if it served it or not as a purpose does us no good to see if we're monitoring that. And I'm not saying police every organization, but I'm just saying have something in the document that will require, an accountability report in the midstream. And that's all I'm asking for, is that does not put a burden on anything. It just requires more accountability to the board, who are ultimately saying yes to these applicants with the faith and knowledge that they're going to go out and serve the intended population of the CRA. Now, it has expanded or broadened to say that these particular entities should serve within the city, but then at some point in time, if there was an audit or so on us to say, well, how can you all prove that they did do that? If we go to this address, will we see this person? The business is not here. And if we had given Chapman some dollars, if they're transient, how do they may have lived there for a couple of days, but how do we know that they actually are serving? My whole intention of these is to infuse nonprofits to provide services within the community, and it stays within the local community. It's not to disrespect the person and personality of the director, but to provide some accountability to the board. And so when I'm asking questions, I'm following up questions, not to be disrespectful, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chairman, but there at times I have been questions that have been just eluded, and that frustrates me. So in all due respect, Mayor, I understand what you're trying to do, but then at the same time, that if she's not understanding my questions, then I have to stop so that we're not wasting time with her explaining something that is not answering my question. Thank you. So can we do that?
Is this your motion? Is there a motion
Yes.
to do a mid-year report? Is there a second on the request? There's a second. All in favor of the motion? Vote on Mr. Mr. Shelley?
Question. So the motion is to essentially amend the process to require some sort of a mid-year report or midterm report that shows that they are in fact serving the CRA or residents of the CRA. And so my question with this, which I think is good, I support it, then my question becomes to, if they don't provide the mid-year report, what then? Or what if they provide a mid-year report and the mid-year report doesn't in fact show that they're serving the CRA, then what is staff supposed to do at that point? Does that then come to us and somewhere in the mid-year and we terminate the funding to date? Do we reallocate the funds? So that would be my only question is I support the theory of what you're trying to do and the principle of what you're trying to accomplish, but I also am a little bit concerned that we're going to make this thing more complicated. The second question to that is not only what do we do if we find out when we get the mid-year report, but what are we going to require as part of that mid-year report? Is it a simple report? Because one thing I do know too is that to require, depending on what you require in the report, could be very labor intensive for the organization. And so then they spend their whole time doing paperwork, and some of these smaller organizations won't have the capacity or the ability or the staff to do so. So we just need to make sure that we find a good middle ground. But I support what it is you're asking for. I just want to make sure that we do it in the right way when we implement it. So thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Burgess?
Thank you, and you took my thoughts right away from me. And so then a follow-up to what Councilman Shelley said was, so we would only be able to give these people 50% of the funds up till then, or what? Because once we give them the funds, we're not recovering them. Because they're in their budget and they've planned on it and most likely they've been spent and wouldn't have the ability to give the funds back. So even if we got a negative report at 6 months out, what do? We just use that as a disqualifier for next year and they're not allowed to come back? Or what? I don't see how we would be able, what we would be able to do with them if we do get a negative report, if all the funds have been distributed out and they've already used them or haven't budgeted out and all. So that would be one of my questions also. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Williams?
Thank you. That's a lot, Mayor. If next time you allow me to answer each one, if they're directing to me the question, were they directed to me, Mr. Chairman?
Well, the CRA board.
Or were they direct? Well, so I'm just trying to get clarity.
I think it was a general question because it was asking options that would be requested of the board.
But it's from my motion. So shouldn't I respond from my motion to them? The questions.
Each one of them had the floor appropriately, and I came down. You
right. That's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to get process.
You have the floor.
Thank you. So, according to page 3, the staff recommends that the grant awards be made on a reimbursement basis. So it wouldn't be anything we have to recapture. It will be based on what they are submitting for reimbursements that will, because at this time, if we vote on this, it says the staff recommends that the grant awards be made on a reimbursement basis so the CRMA may closely monitor the grantees and ensure that the funds are being used for the stated purpose. So that in itself will give us a basis of the midterm report because it's on reimbursables anyway. So we're not giving them all the money up front according to what they're asking us to, what they're recommending. Am I right? Through the chairman, to the manager, to the CRA director.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
because we've had this conversation several years now, we're willing to accept whatever direction you give us in terms of the accountability standards. The issue here is more complicated than it looks because some of these organizations don't run an operation that is as tight as some other operations. And so as you think through, do you want this to be on a reimbursement basis only? Well, that's a, if that's your policy, we will follow it, and then that will be it. And that may resolve some of your other issues. The problem with that broad policy is that some organizations operate differently. There's sometimes extenuating circumstances. So while from a best practices perspective, from an accounting perspective, it's better to do reimbursement only. And for example, the county has some of those standards. A lot of those organizations are larger organizations and they have more people, and some of these operations are more, shoestring operations, and it becomes a little harder for them to, even just on the question of audited statements versus unaudited statements. Some organizations can do audited statements because they have the $7,500 or $10,000 to do a formal audit of their books, others that don't. And so truthfully, I mean, some of this is a question of whether you have faith in these organizations and you want to take on faith that they're servicing the people within the district or not. And then the next year, if you're not happy with their performance, then you don't give them the money. In my opinion, as long as they're not misusing funds, that might be the easiest thing for you to do, because the more restrictions you slap on here, it's going to go take you down a path which I'm not sure you're going to be happy with the results when you're done. But it's totally your decision.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you. What do you mean by not happy with the results? I mean, if the staff has recommended reimbursement, we've already determined that if that's a blanket cover, there's some organizations we're only giving $10,000 to. I mean, audited statements for that. We're looking at the overall programmatic part of the organization, or are we looking at the part that we're just a small part that we're giving towards that organization for the lifeline of what they're trying to do for it? It could be a summer program. So if it's a summer program, then of course the funds are done within 2 to 3 months. And so it wouldn't require waiting to a whole year to get that report. If they're done and the funds have been expended, the program is over, I think a report could be given then. I'm not trying to put anything on a burden on the particular organizations, but we've had some instances that there have been organizations that have mispurposed the money by mistake, and then we've had to catch it, and then they did have to reimburse the city back the dollars, but they did have it in the bank account to do it. So why wait to find that at the end when perhaps we can correct it? So providing an overall blanket saying reimbursable only may not work, because after 3 months of a summer program, that's it. You're not going to get anything the rest of the year. So why would we add that? So that report can be given at the conclusion of the summer camp after 30 days. It depends on the issue, on the organization. And so I'm not throwing a blanket statement out there. It is just to provide a report. Some of these we're giving 35,000, 30,000, what have you. To me, that's a tremendous investment into the process, and I think it's for a year long. As I read the grants, some of them are for a year long, and so that's why I'm asking for that, not to be intrusive on the organization. I'm not asking for financial audit statements. I'm asking just for a mid-year report on what they spent the money on, did they accomplish their mid-objectives by that set time. They tell us what they're going to do with the money. All we do is verify that they did what they say they're going to do with the money. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I think if it's on a reimbursement basis, it certainly gives you more controls in terms of, and it also depends on the philosophy of how you look at this. You have roughly $100,000 that in essence you look at it as you're buying a service, in which case, like any service, you would have the service done and then you'd pay, or you pay a portion and then pay the rest. Or you look at this as this is an organization that you have faith in and trust in, and you're making a contribution. And then at the end of the year, you either satisfy that the organization is servicing the city properly, or you don't provide them with a contribution the next year. The staff recommends the reimbursement as a blanket policy because it certainly is, from an accounting perspective, it's easier for them to make certain guarantees about this if you're looking at this as if you're buying a service. On the other hand, if you're making a contribution, then that's a different philosophical position, and so we'll do it any way you want. It's just that if you want to just fly up a little bit and look at the forest instead of the trees, you have a roughly $150 million budget, and we're talking about $100,000. So we can belt and suspender this as much as you want, or you can look at it as a contribution to an organization and have them come to you at some point and let them report to you on whether you're happy with the way they're servicing the community. That's one option. The other one is we can go strictly accounting and reimbursement and make them show us proof and reports, and we can do all that. It's really just a function of how much money you're contributing and how much staff time and resource and And what are you buying with the extra financial controls? And that's really just pure policy and philosophy.
Mr. Williams, anything else?
No, no, Mayor, it's really not that complicated.
Thank you,
It's
sir.
a mid-year report, midterm report.
Mr. Maldonado?
Thank you. Through the chair, to staff, Gemma, in regards to the applicants, are they clear and do they understand, that the service that they're providing should be provided to, to be focused to the members within the CRA district? Are they made aware of that before they're applying? In the report that they submit, is that information there if let's say if they've received monies in the past, and those reports that they've given, do they show, or is there any, do they show they've been servicing folks in that community?
Yes, sir, to both questions. They are aware in advance that they're required to serve the CRA community. In order to apply for this grant, any applicant must attend a mandatory workshop run by staff. There's a PowerPoint presentation that's both that I gave at 3 different workshops this year and was provided to them in their packets. It's very clear in that presentation, orally and in writing, that they must serve the CRA as part of the grant process. Additionally, in the application itself, they have to demonstrate how they will be serving the CRA. In the final report, they are also required to demonstrate how the money was spent in service to the CRA. Some of the organizations, such as Mexican American Council, for example, provided the names and addresses of children that were part of the program that lived in the CRA. Some of the other organizations provided photos of events that were held in the CRA or flyers that were distributed to residents in the CRA for certain events. So it does depend on the type of program. So if it's specific to individual people, they do provide those addresses. But if it is an event such as a feeding someone event or doing x-rays, then the way that they demonstrate that they serve the CRA is through proof of advertising and outreach.
So afterwards, and I guess this is where at the end of this, is the board going back and kind of reviewing what's been the end result, and that they follow through on what they reported they were going to do?
Staff reviews the final reports, but they do not come before the board unless they apply for a grant in the following year, and then they're included in the packet.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I have a question. Gemma, how has the accounting been with these nonprofits? Have all the dollars and cents added up?
There have been some challenges in the completion of the final reports historically in the life of this program. Some of the applicants will submit receipts for reimbursement for non-reimbursable expenses. Some of those applicants will no longer serve the CRA. They'll admit that they moved the program out of the CRA. And so in those cases, we work with the applicants to either correct if it's an error. So maybe they accidentally submitted a receipt in error, and they have the correct receipt that they're able to provide. But in other cases, and there's been a case recently where there was an organization that served the CRA and then stopped serving the CRA, and they were able to demonstrate through their receipts and through their invoices that they had served the CRA for a certain amount of time, but then they moved out of the CRA, and they no longer serve the CRA. And so we did go back to that organization and ask for the balance of the money that they could not document that they had spent in service of this to the CRA, to ask for that money back, and we did receive that money back from that organization.
So that is the only, well, you said historically there have been challenges with the accounting portion of it. And if this has been an issue historically, I think to me it necessitates stronger checks and balances to ensure that the money is used as it was intended to be used. How many of these programs operate up until the fiscal year ends?
Vice Mayor, I don't know. I can look into that. I do know that some of the programs expend all of the money very early.
Right.
Some of them spread it out, some of them wait till the end. So for example, if it's a summer program, they won't expend anything till June, July, August, and then the fiscal year ends.
And I'm asking because if a lot of them are summer programs, like St. Paul was summer program, Seminole Theater, that's the summer program.
That's what she's saying.
Kicks, I believe that is a summer program. So they'll finish probably in August. So I don't think they should have up until the fiscal year ends to submit a report. They can submit a report 30 days after the operations conclude, so that it gives us more time to be able to look at these reports and decide if we want to support giving them funding the next year. So has there been a case where we provided funding, the money didn't add up, they applied again, and was awarded a grant?
To my recollection and my knowledge, no. However, I would need to research that. I look back at the last year and a little bit at the year before, but this program started in 2011, and I did not go back that far as we were putting together this agenda item. But I'm happy to look into that and get back to you, Vice Mayor.
Fair enough. I think that's very important, because if the dollars are not being spent as they have been intended, then I don't think they should even be allowed to come back to us to ask for a grant. So I'm not comfortable with supporting the reimbursement, because a lot of these organizations, if they have the money to pay for it, they wouldn't even come to us. So I think we should allocate the funds, but when their operations end, they need to submit us a report within 30 days, not at the end of the fiscal year, because we don't have enough time to, vet their program to ensure that it was operated properly. So that's what I would recommend.
Thank you, Vice
We're
Mayor.
happy to implement the will of the board with respect to this program.
What was let's go back to what the motion was, because I only remember what the motion was.
It was
to
a mid-year
report. Does anybody have what that motion was? It did not include what the Vice Mayor just spoke about, which was at the end of the fiscal program, the operation of the program. So, I mean, at this particular point, the way that I heard the motion, and some attorney weigh in here, was to require a mid-year report, and it wasn't reimbursable. Mr. Tate?
I think Board Member Williams' original motion was simply for the mid-year report. I didn't hear a motion yet on the reimbursement versus non-reimbursement.
That's kind of what I heard too, just a mid-year report. There's a motion, that's the motion in the second on the table at this point.
That's what's on the table at this point.
Mr. Shelley?
Yeah, and again, in spirit, I don't have a problem with the mid-year report. I do like the proposal by the Vice Mayor, because I think that also provides within a certain time frame after expenditure of the funds or completion of operations for the purpose in which we gave them the funds, they provide us a report. So it's a more immediate assessment of the effectiveness of those dollars while it's still fresh in everyone's mind and can be assessed before they go through this process again or apply for additional dollars. So I like that. And again, I'm still okay with the spirit of the mid-year report. The only, and what I stated before still stands, and that is I don't know exactly how it's going to be implemented. I think we can probably discuss that going forward. It doesn't have to be decided tonight. But just so long as staff understands what a mid-year report means, and we know what a mid-year report means, and the recipient of the dollars knows what's expected of them as far as a reporting requirement. Those are all things I just want to make sure are clear, but we can probably add that later on as we go. So.
Yes, sir. Mr. Williams, and then the Vice Mayor.
Procedurally, through the chairman to the vice chairwoman, I don't have a problem to include that into the motion. Will we have to do that as an amendment, or could that just be included into what the framework of what we're trying to accomplish here philosophically? If that's okay with the vice chairwoman through the chair.
The Vice Mayor?
Yes, I think it should be amended because of the word mid-year.
Mm-hmm.
And I have proposed that they.
Progress report?
What would the progress report look like?
Well, the progress report will look like, for instance, it will give us going forward if they come back for an additional application. So for me, if I might digress for a moment, I've looked at the reports of the Community Redevelopment Agency. It's not a report that they give out. It's a report, looks like through the chair, to the manager, to the CRA director, who comes up with these final reports? Is it an informational sheet that you all send out to them, or is it something that they just create, or you all package it for them?
We do
And go
package
through
it
the
for
chair.
them.
Gemma?
As part of the application process, they are advised what they need to provide in that final report. So they know from the very day that they apply what they will have to document, what will need to be demonstrated in that final report. It's both in the application package, and when we do the mandatory workshop, it's explained at that time as well. The emphasis is on demonstrating that they serve the CRA, demonstrating that the funds were spent in accordance with the guidelines of the grants, and that any dollar that was expended has both an invoice and a canceled check, so we can verify that it was spent in the manner in which they advised it was spent.
Yeah, so, Madam, so progress report for me will give me information about how the organization is doing through the midstream of the funding cycle. Their objectives, are they close to meeting them? If not, do they need any more technical assistance that we could provide at some point to help them meet their objectives? Because what we do not want is for a report to come back and then they didn't meet anything, and then we're finding out later that they had problems, or they may have thought passing out flyers in the area was part of meeting the criteria, and that may not be what the objective is for. And so I think a progress report, whether it's mid or however, if I use mid, that means 6 months, or however is divided upon that year. But I would say a progress report of some sort before the final report, you know, to track their involvement within the community. That's what I would say to clarify my motion to be.
Vice
Mayor?
Mayor?
Yes. What I would like to see happen, which I think should be fair for everybody involved. I know the CRA, you worked really hard with the application process, and all the nonprofits adhere to all of the rules and restrictions that were in this grant. So I think to throw a wrench in it now, when they've completed everything that they've been asked to complete, I think what we should do is, moving forward, a mid-year report. And if that's something that the nonprofit can't do, then they don't apply for the grant. But for now, we minimally revise it to include a report 30 days after, a progress report. I can support it if it's not as labor intensive. Just something simple, a page or two, how you're doing so far. To just let us know. I don't think it should be formal, just talk to us about how you're doing. I think that's fair.
Okay, Mr. Shelley? That was it, Vice Mayor, right?
Yes.
Mr. Shelley?
Yeah, I concur, I think, with that proposal. So what we're maybe saying as far as what the progress report is going to look like, it's not going to be canceled checks, it's not going to be financials. What it's going to be is a page summation of, we have received the dollars and to date we've done this project. Maybe they provide some pictures, maybe they provide the addresses, whatever they decide to do, and then we can receive it. And at that point, if staff or it comes to the board and feel that there should be additional information, we can make that request. But that's what you're envisioning as a simplistic, and that's okay. I now have an idea of what it is, and I also concur with the Vice Mayor with the 30 days after completion of operations or expenditure of all funds.
Is that all, Mr. Shelley?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Do you understand what the motion is and what's going to be required?
I just want to clarify, is this for this fiscal year or for 2017, 2018?
Mr. Williams?
No, the mid-year report is not for this year. We're talking about going forward. We're saying for this going forward, just a minimum 2-page one. And nothing intensive, nothing grueling, nothing that would cause additional staff persons. Just, hey, we've got the money, we've achieved our first 2 objectives. Here it is. And it should be given to all the board members, you know, as a report. We can look at it. We don't have to look at it, but it's there for informational purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You understand?
So for this year, a mid-year report from all of the organizations demonstrating
Not a progress report, semantics.
a progress report, a written progress report, approximately 2 pages demonstrating their progress towards meeting the goals that they stated in their application, presented in writing to this board. And just to be clear, this is for this fiscal year.
For whoever gets the grant tonight.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, there's been, Mr. Attorney?
And I had a question, just, were we also including your 30-day, as opposed to the end of the fiscal year, 30 days for this year at the close, following the, okay.
Okay,
You have to.
Can you make a motion to amend his motion to include your amendment?
Motion to amend is seconded by Mr. Shelley. Vice Mayor?
No, that's it.
Okay. All in favor of the motion as amended? Aye. Motion carries. Now, back to the question. Vice Mayor, now you, Mr. Burgess, Mr. Burgess.
My question was, if I could, through the chair to the vice chair. You seem to have wanted to eliminate one of the recipients. What
Question about.
would your proposal be as far as where you want those funds, or I guess what, if they're eliminated, what would be your best guess as to what you would like to do with those funds?
Vice Mayor?
Through the chair, I would propose to go to the next
Agreed.
applicant on the
Agreed.
line.
I agree totally. Very good.
I believe that was I'm trying to get to. Was that
So the
St.
next
Paul?
highest, Vice Mayor, if the next highest rated in the ranking was Three Virtues Organization at 169.
No, I think it was St. Paul. I think it was St. Paul.
St. Paul is 151. This, I don't know, this is what,
I'm trying to get back to it.
Gemma?
Oh, that was the next one?
The next
Oh,
one's
whichever
next.
one is the next one.
Three Virtues is number 7 at 169, then St. Paul is 8, and then Changing Children's Life is 9.
The rankings that I have in mind show 169 for Three Virtues, 151 for St. Paul.
Okay.
So based on
Based
on
Which of the
your,
next
on your
tier?
conversation and the ranking of
think
the
that's
committee,
fair.
that would put Three Virtues in, and at your request and subject to the board, would take Chapman Partnership out. That's correct?
Yes, the next tier
Next year?
would be whoever that is.
Anything else, ma'am?
No.
Mr. Williams?
Yes. Through the chair, through the manager, to the director, did one of these organizations tie in their scoring? How do we determine that as policy? If they've tied, how, even though the board recommended, but if they've tied as far as scoring wise, what has been the policy going for a tie?
Gemma?
This is the first year that there has been a tie, and there were actually 2 ties. There was a tie for second place and a tie for 4th place. So the number 2 and number 3 applicants received the exact same score of 208 points. That's the Mexican American Council and the Seminole Cultural Arts Theater Incorporated. And then the number 5 and 6 applicants tied with 171 points, and that's Miami Bridge Youth and Family Services Incorporated and Panther Extreme. There has not been a case of a tie in the past. However, because the committee recommended 6 awards instead of 5, and we moved forward with the committee's recommendation, the top 6 applicants, including the tied applicants, would, under the committee's recommendation, be receiving awards.
Right. Mr. Chairman, now here's where the fairness of it comes in at. If they both tied, both had the same score, what was the prevalent position to give, who was number 1? Kicks. And who's number 2? That
Mexican.
And they tied, and they got a tier rate drop. They didn't get the same funding, right?
The committee recommended that the number 1, which would be Kicks, received 30,000, but that number 2 and 3 received the same amount of 20,000. And so this year,
So-
Mexican American and Seminole tied for
Oh,
second.
so 2 and 3 tied.
Right.
That's
Okay,
correct. So
now,
they-
okay.
They would both, under the committee's recommendation, receive 20,000, And under the committee's recommendation, numbers 5 and 6 would each receive 10,000, even though they tied for fifth.
And under the request of the vice mayor, Chapman Partnerships, 10,000 would be reallocated to 3 virtues, is the way that I read it,
Yes.
right? So the bottom, the 4, 5, and 6 all would receive 10,000, and they would be equally below 1, 2, and 3. Correct.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, I'm sorry, you had the floor there.
No, go ahead, Mayor, you're the chair.
Anything else, sir?
No, no.
Okay, so as has been requested to staff, obviously Chapman Partnership would be removed. The next highest ranking not-for-profit would be 3 virtues. Clear on that?
Yes, sir.
10,000. Correct? Okay, so we know, everybody knows where we are on the board. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Williams?
Yes. Mayor, let me just say to the applicants, thank you for enduring this process up here. I don't single organization out. I want to make sure that the services are provided for the community. And so I think that, listening, this may be redundant for some, but we just want to ensure that the community is being served, and we know that through the years and to some of the nonprofits have done extremely awesome jobs in serving the community. And so we want to make sure that that continues with the newer organizations that come on that are receiving, because there's some organization, I thought was receiving money for the first time. And the reason for mine having a spreadsheet is to see over how many years that the same organizations who have been consistent in doing what they do, doing well, how much money have we provided to them for their continued success. So with that, Mayor, I move what the board has recommended.
Is there a second?
Well, I just wanted to mention.
Let me get, is there a second? Okay, Vice Mayor?
Yes, I just want to reiterate what Councilman Williams said. We respect all of our nonprofits. We don't single anyone out. So, but I just wanted to mention to Seminole Theater, I absolutely love the program that you're going to be implementing. It's fresh. It's going to engage our local youth, and Broadway show Hairspray, I absolutely love it. And I would like to be a part of that. Miami Bridge, the programs the organizations that you're working with are phenomenal. So I'm really looking forward to that. And with Chapman Partnership, you work with a very fragile population, and because of the restrictions of this grant, I couldn't support awarding the funds. However, I can potentially identify some funds that don't have these restrictions to support what you're doing. I don't know if I can get to the 10,000, but I will get you something, as with any of the organizations that have not been awarded, if you're specifically working with kids. But thank you for all the work that you do to provide those gaps in services that we can't provide up here. Thank you, Gemma, to you and your staff.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Gemma. Thank you to the staff. Good job. Nice, healthy discussion. I think we did the right thing, assuming it passed. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any reports, Mr. Manager? Gemma, anything?
No, sir.
This is any public comments? Anyone like to come up and say anything from the public? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move it.
All in favor? Motion carries. Give us about 5 minutes and we'll reset for the council meeting, for the
Who's here from
CRA.